every single year, we're very interested on returning talent, Daniel.
I like talent. I like them
I
to come
love
back.
talent. I like talent acquisition. I like retaining talent,
Mergers
getting
and
rid.
acquisitions.
This is what we're all about. And Kirby knows a thing or two about getting the talent
Does he?
and holding the talent.
See, anyone can just get the talent.
But Kirby keeps it and holds it, and then he brings more people in. We're going to talk about returning talent on this UGA team, where we stack up to other teams, all thanks to Dawgs Stats, next on Locked On Bulldogs.
You are Locked On Bulldogs, your daily podcast on the Georgia Bulldogs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everybody, and welcome. I'm the one that's supposed to start talking now, and so I will about FanDuel. That's who's bringing you today's episode. We love FanDuel. More about them in a second. I am Daniel. I do host this podcast every dang day. This is like every day. This is episode like number 6,000, and so I'm not sure.
A lot of episodes, Daniel.
It's tough. It's tough sledding. That's Clint, and we are the Locked On Bulldogs podcast. So happy that you are here. If you're listening on audio, thank you so much for downloading the show, subscribing, leaving us a rating and a review. And if you're watching on YouTube, hello. It's great to see you. Let us know that you're here by leaving us a comment and subscribe to the YouTube channel. We love all of you guys and appreciate you supporting the show greatly. Today, as Clint said, we're talking about returning talent. Now, our good buddy, Josh, Dawgs Stats, as we like to call him over on Twitter.
Give him a little follow.
Give him a little follow. He's a great time. And he put together a little thing, Pro Football Focus, which not everyone's favorite site. We get that.
Flawed. Every single analytic.
Flawed.
Every single analytic out there is flawed in some degree. Okay?
That's right. It's a great place. Here's the thing I'll say about Pro Football Focus. Great place for gathering composites, not a great place for looking up individual talents.
So as an algorithm,
as an aggregate, it usually provides decent enough information. And this is one of that kind of groupings where we are looking at total numbers of players with a total Pro Football Focus rating of 70 plus. So basically, in layman's terms, what that means is this is the schools that have the most number of quote-unquote good to very good returning players coming back on their teams this year. Should be what you would think would be a pretty good barometer of how well a team will stack up.
That's right.
How many of said players does Georgia have coming back on this year's squad, and how does that compare, Clint, to Georgia's team last year? We know how that team did. So how many do we have, and how many did we have last year?
Yeah, let's talk about this. So again, what Josh will say is 70 or more. That's the grade, as well as has to be 50 pass attempts, 25 rushing or receiving targets, or 75 snaps on O-line or defense. So that's kind of the metric. So you might say, yes, if a player shows out, but in a very, very small segment, it doesn't count. Some parameters for this. And so last year, I'll give you last year's numbers of notable teams that had returning talent. Georgia had 20 returning players last year, graded 70 or more on Pro Football Focus. So that's very good, Daniel.
Well, the rumor was last year we lost all of our players to the NFL draft. If you remember, 15 players to the NFL draft 2 years ago. So I'm not sure how we could have had so many. Who could have seen that coming?
I don't know.
It's weird. It's like that information was out there for anyone to realize Georgia's going to be very good again.
Yeah.
And Florida fans were out here telling us that AR-15 was going to carve us up before the preseason.
Hey,
Scully ready.
Oh, my gosh.
Where are you, my
Please
man?
Come back.
Please come back. We miss you here on the pod. Weldon Brothers, go look for Scully ready.
Okay, but seriously, Weldon Brothers, where are you at? Okay, so last year, those were some teams. Georgia had 20, USC had 16, LSU 14, Oregon 13, Ohio State, Florida State, TCU, Utah all had 11. Now this coming year, some notable play. I'm gonna jump to Georgia, and then we're gonna get to some other notable teams. Georgia this year has 17 players returning. 70.
So a few less, but a pretty comparable number
in the range
to the number last year. Interesting, because we did also lose all of our good players to the draft again this year.
They're all currently in Philadelphia.
They've all left.
Doing OTAs. They're all gone. No, we have 17 returning players. Because again, this is what Kirby does. He gets the talent. He produces on-field development and results. And he also trains these players to get better all the time. And so we see a lot of players getting significant snaps, significant carries, significant targets. That's all happening. The biggest downside on this, again, as all Georgia fans know, you guessed it, the quarterback position is off. We have 0 returning in that category. Okay. So doesn't come because, as I've already said, it's 50 pass attempts or more. And I don't know if you understand how last season
Nope.
Carson Beck did not reach 50. Not even close. So 17, Daniel, which is still a significant amount, still a lot of returning players. And just put this in your mind. That's not just returning players. That's not just production. That's 70 or better production.
These are the returning great players.
Yeah, that's what's interesting. It's not just returning starters or contributing players. It's returning huge influencers to wins of last year's national championship team. That's what we got going on.
Absolutely.
We're going to come back later or next, and we're going to talk about that. We're going to break it down, who we see as very important, that as well as give you some other teams that are within that category. Some may surprise you. I'm going to give you some bottom feeders as well, because it's wild.
It's fun.
But first, FanDuel. FanDuel, Daniel, is the place that you and I both go. We love this site. We love these people. They're the official sports book of Locked On Podcasts and Locked On Bulldogs. It's fantastic because right now you get a no sweat first bet. I don't know if it's summer, people sweating all over the place.
Oh, good Lord in heaven. It's a sweat. It just, 2 shirts. You always carry a spare.
I'll be in the South the first week of July and the third week of July, and I am hating my life. So
when you get a no sweat anything, you're going to want to go ahead and take that.
Take that. And that's what FanDuel does for you. FanDuel.com/lockedon. No sweat first bet. They're the official Locked On sportsbook. And right now, get over there. If you put in the money that you have earned and you want to trust and you want to have reliability, you want to have access to, FanDuel is the place to go. And you can go ahead and if you lose the first time that you make a bet after depositing, they're going to give you a first bet back guarantee of $1,000 in bonus bets. That's $1,000 in bonus bets back to FanDuel.com/lockedon. If you make a bet the first time you're in there and it does not cash, if it's NBA, if it's season win totals, whatever it is, give it there right now. FanDuel.com/lockedon. Terms and conditions apply.
Atlanta Braves plus 480 to win the World Series on FanDuel right now.
So. What about Ronald Acuna to win literally every award that there is on planet Earth?
Player awards. Ronald Acuna Jr. to win the NL MVP and Spencer Strider to win the NL Cy Young parlayed plus 500. Okay, FanDuel.
Daniel, you just go ahead and speak. I'll be back.
All right. Well, we have talked about Georgia's. Now we're going to talk about who some of those players are and whatnot in a second. Georgia has 17 of these returning players. That does not put us at the top of the heap in the NCAA, not actually by any stretch of the imagination. And so let's go. Let's get a bit of a rundown on who some of these teams are that are ahead of Georgia and what that means to us.
And again, one more time, Dawgs Stats over on Twitter. Follow him. He's got this stuff for us. Alabama has 19 returning players of 70 or more graded on Pro Football Focus.
Well, we know that when Alabama returns, a lot of talent on their roster.
But it's not the most talented team
they
ever
will do
comprised.
elite things
that was
with
last year.
They will certainly not piss it away.
Arkansas has 18 returning players of that.
Okay. Arkansas.
Just to let you, Arkansas with 18. We talked about this when we did the All SEC, when Athlon Sports put out their All SEC teams, and Arkansas was notably absent on a number of things. KJ Jefferson notably absent. Arkansas's got some dudes. Y'all.
They absolutely do.
18. Alabama, 19. Ole Miss, 19 players returning with 70.
Now that's interesting because we play them and they're trash. They're a cupcake.
Cupcake.
That's a cupcake team.
Cupcake.
Interesting.
that's all the notable ones on the SEC front that are ahead of us, close to us. LSU 16.
Mm-hmm.
That's unique as well.
That's interesting that they're that low, to be honest with you.
I was expecting them to be up in the 20 number.
Mm-hmm.
Auburn with 14, Missouri 14. Again, all cupcake teams. And by the way, the loudest cheering section for how our cupcake schedule is besides Alabama, Tennessee with 13 returning players. So again, just to make sure you understand what you're saying, Tennessee fan, is that Missouri, Ole Miss, Auburn are not making us more cupcake than you.
They're strengthening our schedule compared to you, but Clint,
yes,
if Joe Milton gets his arm figured out, if he figures out his appendage that's known as the arm,
ooh, that's what this is. Okay, sorry, I now understand.
Then that will be a dangerous team, Clint.
It will be a very dangerous team. Of those teams, and we're going to get to some other teams just nationally, and then really quick, I wanted to go bottom feeders here in the SEC.
Well, we still haven't gotten to Florida. I was just wondering if Florida came in on that.
Oh, no. You know what, Daniel? Here, hold on. Let me.
Just keep scrolling.
I'm
just
scrolling.
Scroll.
Kentucky with 11.
Okay.
That's.
We're still moving down the list.
Sorry, I'm actually.
No, we're still.
I'm actually still looking. I'm not.
No. Okay. Should we play some music or whatever while we
Daniel,
look?
I'm not. I mean, maybe reach out to Dawgs Stats and ask him if there was an
Does
oversight.
Florida have one? Do they have a player graded 70 or higher returning to the team?
No.
If Billy Napier's the coach, does that downgrade everyone to immediately, like, that's the highest you can get is like a 65?
Dawgs Stats, reach out to us. Let us know if we made an oversight on this list, if I'm not reading it correctly, because I found him finally. I found him. No. Gosh, yes. Okay, 13 players. Wow.
13 players. Same as Tennessee, tied with Tennessee.
Okay, I was going to say, what the heck just happened?
So the bottom feeders of the SEC East, Florida
real
and
bottom
Tennessee.
Feeders, Vanderbilt with 2.
Oh, no.
Texas A&M, 3. 3 returning players.
How many years till Jimbo gets fired? It's an honest
whatever
question.
Whatever his contract
No,
is.
they'll buy that contract out.
Can't.
They'll buy it.
I think if it's been 1 year, it's something
Did you see how much money they paid all those kids to come to school for 1 year?
And then
They'll buy that contract.
Oh my
out.
gosh.
They get rid of him.
3 years?
What if Texas A&M buys out Jimbo's contract?
Oh, please say more.
And then offers Nick Saban $20 million a year to come and coach at Texas A&M.
Okay, this is now. Hold the podcast. We need to. We're gonna zag. Whenever we thought we were gonna zag.
Mm-hmm.
Y'all remember old ball coach went up to South Carolina?
This is the Nick Saban version of that.
This is the Nick Saban version of that. I see this as a possibility.
Can we get Marler on the show right now? Can we call him in right now and just see if
the
we
next
can
time I'm on SEC Uncensored,
You're gonna ask him about it.
I gotta.
It's
ask
a legitimate possibility. They offer him $20 million a year, and he just rolls his motorized his rascal scooter into the stadium, and he's out there gigging them.
Oh my gosh,
it's happening. It's absolutely.
I could
happen.
absolutely ask FanDuel if they want to put some bets on that.
All right, we're going to get to other teams of note around college football who have more returning talent. Clint and I are going to talk about who poses the biggest threat talent-wise to Georgia in segment 3 when we come back right after this.
Okay, let's go through some other big-name schools. Why I'm high on Michigan this year. They have 22 players returning, Daniel. That is nearly now all these are contributors. It's not just each position, but hypothetically, that's every starting position on the football field returning for Michigan.
We looked at it when we looked at in that last episode that we did last week with some of the information from Dawgs Stats. I think it was like 80% of their total production from last year returns. Insane. And this is a school that, again, last year made the college football playoff, won the Big Ten, and beat Ohio State for a second consecutive year. they were not an underachieving school. Now, you say what
No.
you will about Jim Harbaugh in the college football playoff. He's been very bad. Well, guess who else has been very bad in the college football playoff the last couple of years? Everyone who's played Kirby Smart.
That's the one.
And that's what Jim Harbaugh has had. Well, he didn't get to play Kirby Smart this year, but
No.
it wouldn't have gone any better for old Jim than it
Wouldn't have
did
been
for
great.
old Sonny. So
Oh,
there's
don't pick on Sonny like that.
I didn't pick on him. His
Kirby
own
did.
football team picked on him by going out there and losing 63
Remember when they scored that touchdown
I do.
and everybody was like, "Oh, this is a game.
Oh, look at
We're
this.
so close."
Took the top off the defense. Really exploited Georgia in the passing game.
I love commentators.
I love it.
Um,
So Michigan had their struggles in the college football playoff. This was a great team last year, and 80% of that production from a good team is back.
I'm telling you, when we do locks this coming year, Michigan's going to get a lot of my attention. I think they're going to get a lot of Vegas's attention. I think those point spreads, I'm going to want to bet, but I don't think I'm going to be able to bet because those point spreads are going to be quite high in Michigan Gauge because of all this. UCLA second on the list with 21 players returning.
UCLA ahead of USC. Now think about the narratives in these two schools. Lowly old Chip Kelly just flying under the radar down there in Southern California. Lincoln Riley, Caleb Williams, just cussing people out on his
Left and right.
his hands,
Literally left and right.
left and right. And the narrative is USC cruises to the college football playoff. Look at all the returning talent that UCLA has, and Chip Kelly could be interesting.
Some other notable teams, USC right there as well with 21. Wake Forest, 20 players returning on that team, which again, we've said, look, ACC and everything like that, don't crown people just yet, is all I'm saying.
Absolutely.
Florida State with 19.
The
That's why they're
ACC is wide open this year.
wide open.
Wide open. And the ACC hasn't been wide open in a long time.
Of note to Florida fan who's here, Utah returns 19 players.
Utah is going to annihilate Florida
To
in
be
week 1.
glorious.
And I'm just going to be sitting there just
The Stu and I are going to be good friends.
just
that day.
consuming all of the popcorn.
We already talked about Alabama at 19, another notable team, as well as Arkansas, Oregon. A lot of Pac-12 schools represented here. Oregon with 18, Washington with 19. This little sleeper team, I'm not going to call it a sleeper team because I think they need their quarterback situation figured out. And if they do, they got a good coach, Dave Aranda. Baylor has 17 players returning.
Interesting.
Watch out.
Haven't heard you say Ohio State yet.
Ohio State. Let me get there. Going down the list. Ohio State. That's Ole Miss. That's the O there. Ohio State, 19 players returning.
19 players.
Yeah.
Okay. So right there
Right there with
in it.
Washington, Alabama, Ole Miss, Florida State, returning players. Now, of those teams, Daniel, who has the biggest threat? Of those returning players, we got Michigan, UCLA, USC, Wake Forest, Florida State, Ole Miss, Utah, Ohio State, Washington, Alabama, Minnesota. Didn't mention them. Arkansas, Oregon, Baylor, Penn State, 17. Of those teams, who has a biggest chance of repeating success from last year?
You know, it's if you're going to beat a team like Georgia, or even a team like Alabama, or another one of these like Ohio State, if you're going to beat one of these powerhouse programs in college football, you are going to need more than the biggest quantity of talented players on the field.
Yep.
Because as informative as these stats are, not all 70-plus players are created equal.
No, they're not.
That's the thing about it. And so if you've got a bunch of pretty good players, do you know who you are?
Who are you?
TCU.
Real talk.
You got a bunch of pretty dang good players. And do you know what happens when you go up against a team with a bunch of really elite college football players? You end up running into a monster of
We've
sorts.
said this on this podcast many, many times. Okay. You can make a good team. This was actually Michigan's problem for years. All right.
Mhm.
And then Corum came on, as well as the rest of the running backs, and McCarthy actually had a pretty good season, all things considered.
Yeah.
Unless you have that upper crust of football player, it's not going to do you much. You can have a well-rounded team, which is good. It makes you competitive and makes you be able to win. You could be a Boston College, you could be a Kentucky and always play really well. That's all true.
You could be Alabama, go 10-2.
You can be Alabama, a well-rounded team.
Just a pretty good, decent team.
Really decent team.
They only lost by a total of 3 points in their 2 losses. They hang the banner.
Yeah, I mean, put
Like,
it there.
hang the banner.
But what happens if you lose the two
Build a
most
statue.
generational players ever
Well, you get
on
better.
defense and
You definitely get
offense
better when
at
you do that.
Alabama?
It's the thing that we've said, to be, in all honesty, about Georgia, about our own team, that it's why a guy like Carson Beck is so important, because no matter what the narratives were coming out of 2021, no matter how good that defense was in 2021, that defense didn't win in spite of Stetson Bennett. The defense didn't win. The defense didn't carry Stetson Bennett to that title. Now, I'm not saying Stetson Bennett won it in spite of the defense either.
No.
It was not a Cam Newton, Tim Tebow type of situation where he just put the entire team on his back and carried us. And I think that's what a lot of people misunderstood about Stetson Bennett, and that's why and decided that since he wasn't Cam Newton, that it was that the defense carried him. But that doesn't happen in college football. And so this year's Georgia team, for example, it doesn't matter how good Michael Williams is or Malachi Starks is. It doesn't matter how good the offensive line is. It doesn't matter how good JDJ is and some of these other players that Georgia has that we think are going to be absolutely exceptional, elite players. If Georgia doesn't get really good quarterback play, Georgia's not going to win anything this year. Now, they'll still maybe win the SEC, but they're not going to win the national championship this year if they don't get really good quarterback play. And according to this list, Georgia doesn't have really good quarterback play. Now, again, this list doesn't make allowances for the fact that these people didn't have Carson Beck didn't have an opportunity to play. We're going to have to wait and see on the field. There's going to be a lot of those teams. Now, just because a school like Michigan returns a quarterback that was really highly productive this year, if you had to make me bet who's going to be really highly productive this year, J.J. McCarthy or Carson Beck, I would bet on J.J. McCarthy because that's pretty much a sure bet.
He's done it.
He's already done it. And we know that is something that he's very capable of, if not likely to do. That doesn't mean that Carson Beck has a lower ceiling than J.J. McCarthy, or that Carson Beck doesn't have every opportunity to be better than J.J. McCarthy, but that remains to be seen. And so that's what, if you're a Georgia fan, you're waiting on is to see some of these guys that are not on this list because they haven't gotten opportunities to play, to see some of these guys specifically in key positions get out there on the field and show you something, because that's where the difference is going to be made. Because I'll just tell you this, maybe not more so than a school like Alabama or Ohio State, but even I'd put Michigan in this category of Georgia's. The 17 players that are on that list for Georgia are way more talented than the 17 best players on Michigan's roster this year. You know what I'm saying? Michigan may have 23 70-plus players, and Georgia only has 17.
But again,
if you compare top 17 to top 17,
there you go.
I guarantee you Michael Williams is better than anyone on Michigan's roster.
Anyone.
I guarantee you
better than
Brock Bowers is better than anyone on Michigan's roster. So the difference is going to come in some of those guys who are not one of the 17 right now, proving themselves to be the highly recruited elite football players that they have been touted to be.
That's exactly right. Hey, this has been Locked On Bulldogs, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We will see you all next time.
See ya.